Welcome, everybody.
Ask
This
a
is,
quick question. Oops.
yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah,
We're recording. Go ahead.
that's fine. I just wondered if Wayne Appleyard is still active.
Yes, I just
Okay.
saw him this morning. I mean,
Okay.
active, and yeah, he was at the Education Committee meeting this morning.
Okay. Good. I just need to get a hold of him. Thanks.
Yep. Well, welcome, everybody, to our Thursday evening solar stories. And I'm John Sarver, and I'd like to thank our sponsors, the State Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, Homeland Solar, Harvest Solar, Sri Energy, and Sumter Solar. And I know most of you, many of you are members. If you're not, we would love you to join GLREA, which you can do online at glrea.org, glrea.org. And tonight, we're doing a virtual solar home tour. October is the month where ASUS, American Solar Energy Society, hosts a national solar home tour. In each October, we've been doing a kind of a virtual one with three presenters. And so tonight we have John Richter and Dave Arnosti and Bob Synk that are going to tell us their stories. And the first one will be John Richter. Go ahead, John. Oh, and by the way, everybody, please mute yourself.
Thank you, John. I am not. Oh, there we go. All right. So we bought a house a year and a half ago. That is a large south-facing roof with zero shade. The land used to be a gravel quarry, so there were no trees. My system was just installed in August by Sri Energy, which is based in Novi. They did a lovely job. It consists of 9 Philadelphia, that's just a brand, Philadelphia 440 watt panels for a total of 3.96 kilowatts of DC power. Each of those has a microinverter on the back, an N-phase IQ9A, so that my total AC rating is 3.14 kilowatts. So it's a relatively small system in terms of residential solar. And the reason for that is that, well, I'll get to that. We got conduit that runs down the side of the house, goes to a little N-phase enclosure box, and there's a shutoff switch, and then the power runs from that into the basement, and it's connected into the service panel. It was new construction. I've got a 200 amp service panel. There were plenty of slots for that. The cost was $10,930, which is $2.75 per watt of DC, which is kind of the standard metric for looking at the pricing of a solar system. Although if you get batteries, it can be a whole lot higher. This is a photograph of part of our subdivision from a hill. So my house is in the middle there with the black section of roof, right? And as I zoom in here, okay, there's the house, and you see the houses are pretty closely put together, but we've got this hill behind us, so there's just completely unrestricted sun. This is a picture of the roof itself. You can see the 9 individual panels, right? A row of 5, a row of 4. This is the conduit that runs out of it that's carrying the 240 volt AC power because the inverters are on the back of these panels. That conduit then runs down the side of the house and over a little bit where it goes into, this is just a big plastic N-phase box. There's some electronics and monitoring in there. The power runs over to the shutoff switch. This is a legal requirement. So if, for example, your house is burning and the firemen shut off the power from the utility, well, they want to make sure your solar panels aren't feeding power into the live wires that they're about to spray water on. So they have the shutoff switch that they can turn the power off. Power then runs through the wall into the basement and into the service panel. So it takes, a dual breaker because it's 240 volts. And they stick a little sticker on there warning you that, unlike most circuits in your service panel, this isn't one that's a load that's taking power. This is power coming into the system. Now, in terms of sizing, right? In Michigan's distributed generation program, you are limited to 110%, a system that will produce, this is based on a calculation, 110% of the prior 12 months of usage. So my prior 12 months of usage was 5,059 kilowatt hours. And I got that from DTE's website. So you can go there and you can download your usage for the last 12 months hourly, right? So it's a big spreadsheet of your consumption each hour of each day for the last year. Now, shortly after getting the system, I purchased an electric vehicle. Obviously, my usage is going to go up. So applying the 10%, I can do 5,564 kilowatt hours. And my projected 12-month production out of this system, and I used PV watts to come up with this, is 5,356 kilowatt hours. So pretty close to the limit imposed by the distributed generation program. This is the rates that I pay DTE. This doesn't include some of the surcharges and taxes and things, but the base rates. There's 4 time periods: summer peak, summer off peak, winter peak, and winter off peak. So these are my prices in cents per kilowatt hour. Any excess energy that I produce and outflow to the utility, I get a credit for, but it's much smaller than the rate I pay them. And I put those rates in here for the same 4 time periods and computed what percent of the retail rate is the outflow. And you'll see basically they're paying you, to round this off, about half of what they're charging you. So selling your energy to DTE or consumers, it's a really bad deal. If you can use that power yourself, you're much better off. But the problem is you're not producing all the same times that you're using energy, particularly at night. So I did a financial analysis, and it's quite involved. It's a giant spreadsheet, but I'll just give you the highlights here. So I downloaded my hourly usage from DTE's website. I then used PV Watts, which is a free online tool that the Department of Energy's developed. If you want to find that, just use your favorite search engine, put in PV Watts, it'll find it, to download my hourly projected production. So I then broke out my usage into the seasons, the winter and the summer, the way DTE does, and the peak and off-peak periods by their definitions. And I computed my hourly savings from this production that I self-consume, right? The energy that I can use right away as I produce it, as well as the energy that I outflow to DTE and get a credit for. Now, in my financial analysis, I looked at EIA data from the Department of Energy and said historically, Michigan residential rates have increased 2.6% a year over the past decade. I find a hard time believing that. I really think it's higher, but that's what their data showed, so that's what I used. As PVs get older, their output declines. The rate of that degradation varies a little bit from manufacturer to manufacturer. So I looked at the spec sheet and it says 0.4% a year. So first I computed a simple payback. I ignored the increasing rates and the decline in output, and I said, okay, just my first year savings of $821 gives me a simple payback of 9 years. If I also consider that rates are going up and the output is going down, that trims down a little bit to 8.4 years. But it wasn't a huge effect because the rate increase I was using here is not all that high. So I like to just get right to that because everybody's always asking me, well, what's the payback? Well, I know. I did a rather detailed calculation, and once I've had it for a year, I'll know even better. So the big question for me in this installation is, do I want to put in a battery system? And initially, I was all for it, right? About half of Michigan solar installations now are getting battery systems. And I was real interested in that. So I had 6 different companies quote me systems. And the batteries came in between 14,400 and 17,300. They were all in the range of 12 to 15 kilowatt hours. So they're about the same size. And the benefit you get from a battery, there's at least 2. One is that if the utility power goes out, you've got clean, silent, instant backup. Now, a lot of my neighbors here are buying big natural gas generators, and they will start automatically, but there's a cutover period there, right? So your lights are going to be out for a minute or whatever while the generator starts up. and switches over. The batteries don't do that. The cutover is instantaneous. You probably won't even notice a slight flicker in the light. But that's the one people tend to say they buy batteries because they want to cover their outage possibilities. But the other big advantage is more self-consumption. You have less outflow during the day to the utility because you're charging the battery, and maybe no outflow during the day, right? Because you're charging up the battery. And then you're using less purchased power in the evening hours because you're discharging power from the battery, particularly during the peak rate period, right? So a battery does enhance the economics of the solar panels. Unfortunately, it does so at a rather high cost right now. And so I looked at that, and I have other ways, which I'll talk about, to ride out a power outage. It's not as nicely automated as a battery or a backup generator, but it definitely works. And the improved self-consumption, right? That improves your economics a little, but not enough to justify a $15,000 battery system. So I wanted to look at what else I could do. So first of all, we've had a few power outages here already. And I had, until I bought the EV, I had a Prius. And I would just clamp a 1,000 watt inverter onto the 12-volt battery, run an extension cord into the house, and run my critical loads off of the Prius. It is the cleanest, quietest, most reliable backup generator that you'll find. And that worked pretty well. The downside was I had a extension cord running in the door, which meant the door was open, and I had to keep the garage door open because there was exhaust. So from a security perspective, that was not really good. I've now replaced my Prius with a 2023 Hyundai Ioniq 5, which I just bought used for a mere $21,000. It has a 74 kilowatt hour battery. So think about that. A 15 kilowatt hour battery was $15,000, but I got a 74 kilowatt hour battery for $21,000 with a 10-year warranty. The neat thing about the Hyundai is its vehicle to load capabilities. So there's a little $70 adapter I plug into my charging port, and I've got 120 volts, a full 15 amps, that's 1.8 kilowatts of power to run whatever I want. So I can do that like I did the Prius. I can run the extension cord in the door. But the cool thing is I don't have to open the big garage door because I'm not producing exhaust. I'm just running off of the batteries. Now, Hyundai wasn't really thinking of it this way. They market it as, you're out camping and you can power things, or you're doing a construction project and you can run your power tools. But there's a great video on YouTube about a guy that wired up his house and runs it off his Hyundai when there's a power outage. And I plan to copy him, which is you install a generator port in your garage, as if you were going to have like a portable gasoline generator. You were going to plug in to power your house. And it runs into your service panel. And because it's 120 volts, and this is the big limitation, you can't run everything in your house. You can only run the 120 volt items and really only half of the circuits on your circuit panel. But it's still marvelous because it ends the extension cord business, right? Makes it all clean and easy. The only 240 volt appliance I have is my central air conditioning. So it's not a problem for me that I can't run 240 volt items. Now, if you have an electric water heater or an electric dryer or an electric stove, obviously that would be a much bigger limitation. And because my service panel is big, I probably have enough slots I can get all my 120 volt stuff on the one side, or at least everything important. Now, the next step for this is, okay, aside from getting you through the power outages, how do you use an electric vehicle to improve your self-consumption, right? So you're using your power that you generated yourself instead of selling it to the utility and then having to buy more from them at night or whatever. Well, there are a few cars out there that have a fully automated, fully bidirectional charging system, right? You've got a level 2, 240 volt charger. It's plugged into the vehicle, and if the power goes out, it'll run the house. And some of them even have a feature. It can be interconnected with the solar and detect that and, charge your system. But they are very expensive. There's only a few vehicles that do it, and they're very expensive. Just the electronics to hook a GM truck into a bidirectional mode is $7,000 to $9,000. And I just talked to somebody a few days ago. He did it in his house, and they included a separate battery system, which I'm not sure why you do that when you've got the battery in the vehicle. But he spent $30,000. Not the solution I'm going to go with. There are some level 2 EV chargers that integrate with solar on any EV. And what they do is they measure your PV production and see what your outflow is. And they charge the EV at just the rate sufficient to eliminate your outflow to the utility. Now, they don't always do that. It's a mode you put it in, right? You say, I want to be fully green, and it will only use your solar power to charge your EV, which means you've eliminated the outflow, and now you've charged up your vehicle. I don't drive that much, so all that power in my vehicle is just going to fill up the battery pretty soon. But if I take the Hyundai's vehicle to load capability, flip the main breaker off my to off position on my house so that everything thinks we just had a power outage, run the house off my Hyundai during the night when there's no solar production, then in the morning go back and flip it back to regular mode and charge the car off the green power. I am almost certain this will work very nicely. It's a little manual, flipping stuff back and forth, but I will certainly try it at least for a time because I find it fascinating, and I really would like to stop spending much money with DTE. So I have a solar system on the house. That's working. Everything's great. I have a level 1 charger I'm using for my EV. That's getting me by fine right now. I'm doing the research on the level 2 chargers that are available that will integrate with the solar to try and work out a better system here to improve my self-consumption and reduce my utility bill. And with that, I'll take, I don't know, John, we have time for a question or two?
Yeah, why don't you take a few questions?
Okay.
Hi, John. Your panels are 440 watts.
Yes.
Is that like where we are now with the technology, that's a good price point to like
So
more
the whole
watts would
system
be
is
more
called,
expensive and
yeah. So I mean, all the panels I got quoted were roughly in that range, 380, 440, 480, something like that, right? The panels that utilities use are much bigger. They're doing 700 watt panels now.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of where we are with panels. And 275 a watt, I thought was a good deal, particularly on a small system like this, right? Your per watt price will go down a little bit on a bigger system.
And I noticed you have a lot more roof space. Are you thinking you can add more panels later?
Well, that's the restriction of distributed generation program, right? But with my EV, my usage isn't going to go up all that much. What I may well do later is add an electric water heater, right? And boost my usage and add some panels, but we'll see how that goes.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe I'll get my wife to actually get an EV too, and we can boost our usage. She drives more than I do.
Lee, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thanks for sharing your story, John. I have an EV also, but I don't have solar. And I wonder if you could talk about like if I wanted to be able to use my car battery during a power outage, would that be possible without a solar array? And how would I do it? I don't even have a level 2 charger in my garage. I don't really drive enough to even justify it. So what would be my next steps?
It totally depends on the EV you have. Most of them don't have vehicle to load capabilities. It's one of the features that I loved about the Hyundai. And only a handful of them have, full bidirectional charging. So what kind of EV do you have?
I've got a Chevy Bolt.
Yeah, I'm not certain, but I don't think it has either of those capabilities. Um, so I don't know that there's a way to do that, at least not that I'm aware of.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry to bear bad news.
It's all right.
Why don't we take just one more question and then we'll move on to David? Go ahead, John.
A couple things. John, can you put your email in the chat so if Leah or other people want to follow up with you, they could? And
Do that?
secondly, when you did your financial analysis, is that what does PV Watts do the financial analysis, or
No.
was there some other software you used that other people could use, or is this just something you figured out on your
It
own?
was a massive Excel spreadsheet. So PV Watts just gives you your hourly production.
Okay.
And DTE gave me my hourly usage, and all of the calculations after that were me putting formulas in Excel.
Yeah, we talked about that at the education committee today about the idea of trying to do a financial analysis with the ITC and then without the ITC and what the impact will be. And we thought we'd try and do something like that for the year and year begin meeting, but no one really seemed to have a good idea and whether there was like some type of software that's readily available.
The people who quote systems all have one. Aurora, I think, is the thing most of them are using. And I
Okay.
did fail to mention on my financial analysis that I did consider the 30% tax credit. So, whoops. Um, Good point.
Let's move on to David, and we'll, I think, have some time at the end for additional questions for any of our presenters. Go ahead, David.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Let me just switch into presenter mode here. I'm David Arnosti, and full disclosure here. Oops, just a moment. Sorry, I seem to have unshared. Let me try that again. Here we go. My daytime job, I'm a biochemist at Michigan State University. I'm also active in solar activities with our church's green team, and I help coordinate the capital area chapter of Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, which is a statewide nonprofit that helps houses of worship achieve their climate justice goal, and many of those involve going solar. So yay, Leah Wisty. Okay, so I'm going to include a discussion of a now legacy system. This is a solar system that we put in 2010. And I love John's technical analysis. Very interesting. I don't have all of those kind of numbers. My story comes, I think, with a tree hugger perspective and a goal to turn a completely conventional suburban house into a net energy neutral house, which we're getting close to. As probably all of you know, the best energy that you've got is the energy saved. One of the steps that we took to this 1970 build was to put insulation in the walls. We used a magnesium oxide cement product, so it's not urea foam, but it does the same thing and makes the house warmer. We also upped the amount of ceiling insulation, which was probably the biggest impact on our energy bills right away before we were even doing renewables. Uh, just for a broader audience, thinking when I first got into this, I was somewhat taken aback. Michigan solar energy, if you look at the solar energy availability in the North American map, it's New Mexico, California, Arizona that have the most sunshine. We're kind of in the light yellow portion, but Michigan on average gets about 1,500 kilowatt hours per square meter of surface in the state per year, 1,500 kilowatt hours. So like 3 square meters would be enough to power John Richter's house if he had 100% efficient. And those numbers also in conjunction with other kinds of systems. Germany only has about 2/3 of that amount of solar illumination. And yet, if you look at the current state of affairs with their build, the inset shows daily production during the summer, and the red circle shows a banana poking out of the pie. That is the amount of solar energy generated from large and small scale installations in that somewhat cloudy, much less sunny than Michigan country. So it really can make a big systemic difference. Our house, shown from outer space, then includes solar panels I had on that other picture, which are facing west. as well as some solar roof vents and some hot water panels. And then on the right-hand side, excavations, which were leading to our geothermal system, which I'll describe as well. So the whole solar itch started 20 years ago when Urban Options had a program and helped us put in 2 solar hot water panels that are pointing south on the roof of the garage, which circulate ethylene glycol to a heat exchanger in the basement in a 119-gallon tank, which for 6 months of the year provides all the hot water we need. This drips into a regular gas water heater during the winter time when there's hardly any or no solar heat. Then it's just providing hot water via the old-fashioned gas. And we're working right now to cut that last fossil fuel umbilical cord. Natural gas charges just for the water heater. Generally, it's mostly the customer charge of being connected. So it's maybe $240 a year for having the system. So I'm looking forward to getting rid of that. We're replacing it with a plug-in heat pump hot water heater that can go into a 120 circuit. We have a 120 circuit nearby, so that makes it easy to install. And these water heaters are specifically tailored to people who are taking gas out and putting an electric heat pump in and don't want to put in an expensive 220 lead into that area. So still in progress. They haven't installed it yet. I'll let you know. Back to the home solar. Initially, this was a 4.4 kilowatt system. They were 250-watt panels back then. In 2010, that was state of the art and provided about 80% of our electricity. The cost at that time was $8 a watt. Now, this is $2010 too. So it did include shingles underneath, but still, it was way more than, say, $3 a watt that you'll often see. I did get a 30% tax credit in those early days. And the system provides substantial amounts of power also on cloudy days, and over the years has produced lots of fossil fuel sparing electrons. This is a yearly production where you can see how little there is in January, February when snow is on the array. In cases where we've had to replace inverters, this is a microinverter powered system. We've relied on Sumter Solar Services, who I understand are a sponsor of this series. So yay, Sumter Solar. This fall, we're moving ahead with an expansion of our solar array to accommodate the extra geothermal and electric car usage. So about a 5.8 kilowatt expansion, fewer panels, more power. Of course, these are 400 some watts. We're working with Absolute Solar. It'll go on the east side of the house. So when the sun comes up, those are going to be predominant. As the sun is setting in the west, and the west panels will be doing more of the power. So we'll have a smoother or flattened out curve compared to what we used to have. The geothermal was a long time in thinking. This is a technology that's been around a long time, longer than solar panels. It's essentially just refrigerator technology, pumping heat from one place to another. There are different ways of pumping heat out of the ground for winter heating and pumping heat into the ground for summer cooling. The most common in our setting is a closed loop system where you have circulating coolant going through the ground, picking up heat or dumping the heat, depending on which way you're running it. So that would be the left-hand house. And we talked to a number of contractors. One of them was daring enough to say they could drive their trucks through our side yard into the backyard, and the little X's show where the wells were to be dug. And indeed, they did get the drill rig back there, amazingly enough. And they put in 350-foot wells, about 5-inch bore. They backfilled with bentonite. There's a PVC pipe that goes all the way to the bottom and back up again. The bentonite material seals the hole so you don't have groundwater exchange, and also is a heat exchange medium. And the contractor then picked up from where the driller left off. They trenched 5 feet down, tied all the plastic tubes together, connected them into our basement. You can see the tubing at the bottom of the trench right there. And then they filled everything back in again. And after a season or two, it's all grown over. So only thing that you can tell is the grass is a little bit nicer, and we've got a new native pollinator garden that I used part of that space for. So the heat pump, geothermal heat pump unit is the same size as a gas furnace, plugs into the ducting that we had for the gas furnace. Essentially, the only difference are these leads here, which carry the coolant or heat conducting material, which is water methanol mixture, into the unit, and then during the winter time it extracts heat from that, pumps it through the ducting system. And keeping careful track of that, one of the advantages to this new system is because it runs constantly at a very low rate with warmish but not really hot air, so maybe 95-degree air. Finally, the upstairs bedrooms equalized their temperature. Before, with the furnace, it was always an issue that the bedrooms would cool off and be too cold. And so that's a plus that my wife appreciates. We went with a Michigan Energy Service install, and the Hydron is the name of the company. So these units have efficiency ratings, and essentially for moving heat out of the groundwater, you get an efficiency rating of around 4.5 to 5. This contrasts with an air kind of heat pump, which you might see Mitsubishi units outside of houses now or buildings. Those transfer efficiencies are not as high because you're extracting heat from the air instead of from groundwater, maybe 3 to 1 or something like that. The air conditioner efficiency has its own efficiency rating of 20 to 30, and it uses actually very little electricity to keep the house nice and cool during hot days. For this system, it ran us $39,000. We did get a 30% tax credit. The final cost was $27,000. A new gas furnace would have been probably around $9,000 or $10,000. Because the heat pumps work at lower temperatures, they don't burn out as fast. So it's likely that we'll save money over the years in not having to replace furnaces also, as well as achieving our green goals. This just showing some of our gas bills before when we were running a gas furnace. Winter, you can see these tall peaks. And then you can see when we put in the geothermal system, the tall peaks disappeared. So how we found our contractor, we went through earthcomfort.com, which is a trade site listing geothermal contractors. We also, in 2022, acquired an EV. It runs about 6,000 miles a year. That's about 1,500 kilowatt hours used. We did put in a level 2 charger. And in terms of the amount of energy, before we put in the geothermal heat, before we had an EV, we used about the same amount of electricity as John was describing, about 5,000 kilowatt hours per year. And that electricity use with the car and with the geothermal doubled to about 10,000. And so what about the costs and savings? I haven't done the spreadsheets. I've just done back of the envelopes. I'm not sure that right now we're saving money with not burning natural gas, instead heating with the heat pump heater. But there are a couple of major considerations here. One, who knows what the price will be in the future? Two, we don't want to burn fossil fuels, period. Three, the geothermal system is actually more comfortable. And because of its super efficiency, we have very little bad conscience about running it during the summer. And for sure, summers are just going to get hotter and hotter, and electricity costs will go up. One other thought that John touched on was you don't get that much money for backfeeding energy into the system. So up till now, we've always charged our electric car at night, like night rates, helping the utility balance their load. And now I think with the new solar panels, which will definitely produce more than we need during the daytime, We'll probably just charge the car when it's sunny outside in the summertime and try to catch our highest production period for putting it into the car. And that's how far we've gotten on our goal to be a net zero household using conventional kind of 1970s homes and modern technology. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, let's take a couple questions. Go ahead. Who's got a question? Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I think you said that you added solar panels later on. And I was wondering how you justified that with the utilities. I mean,
Yes. We first put in the geothermal, which used probably another 3 to 4,000 kilowatt hours per year. And then we have been plugging in our EV regularly. So we had these new additions for at least 1 year, and they could say, aha, your usage went from 5,000 to 10,000, so you can put in more panels. That's how we justified it.
Do we have another question?
Our backup system is not nearly as elaborate as John's. If the power goes out in the winter, we have a pile of firewood and a wood burning stove. And
Go ahead, Harvey.
yep.
Yes. So I'm curious on a lot which say has a lot of big trees, and you have these geothermal wells. What is the risk or the probability of damage, and how would that be handled?
So for geothermal systems, for a closed loop where you're not pumping water, you're just circulating coolant or heat exchange fluid. There are two general ways that you go. If you have a large yard with very little growing on it, somebody's going to suggest that you use shallow trenching and maybe loops 5 feet down or more. Our lot was not so big, so they simply picked 3 spots about 10 feet away from each other and went down 150 feet through mud, gravel, shale, and I think into stone. You're not going to hit any tree roots going straight down. I've even heard of people doing this in tight suburban lots in Ann Arbor, where they just picked up some of the driveway and put the boreholes down there. So it is possible by drilling down to use small lots, and I don't think that scattered trees are going to be affected at all if you can get the rig in there.
Go ahead, Lisa. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Why don't we'll come back. Maybe you can ask a question later. Why don't we move on to Bob, and then we'll have a chance at the end of the three presentations for additional questions. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, John. Hi, everybody. This is me in front of my house and the hot water solar collectors on the roof. You can see they're braced up a little bit above the roof to make it more vertical. We did that later to try to get more hot water in the winter. I have so much more hot water than I need in the summer, and then not enough in the winter. And like the other two speakers said, you yeah, it, we would like to even it out, but it does work very well. And I was surprised, actually. I've been using it for 11 years, and it works very well. This was installed by Chuck Almond, who lives in Grand Rapids or East Grand Rapids, and he also installed the PV He was teaching solar at Muskegon Community College until this past year, I think, and he retired now. But he's still doing design work, although I don't believe he's climbing up on roofs anymore. But at the time I did this, I went with the hot water heating because I wanted to cut my carbon. And I was thinking that my electricity was already pretty clean because I had signed up for the Consumers Energy Green Generation Program. So most of my carbon was coming from the natural gas. Um, but then after doing that, then the desire to do more kept growing. And so after getting the garage re-roofed, we had the PV put on the garage. And um, at that time, uh, each panel was just 300 watts. So, which is why I was surprised about the 440 watts. Um, and then we re-roofed the house, and so then we could put more panels on the house. This is my wife, Teresa, and I proudly in front of our panels, we have 7 facing west and 7 facing east on the other side of this roof. The garage also faces west. And we haven't had a problem with the east-west at all. So yeah, you don't have to have south facing to make it work. So I keep track of the electricity, the gas, and the kilowatts generated. And in this spreadsheet, so I have a solar credit, which is coming from another Consumers Energy program where you could buy a share of their solar farm. And just like my solar panels, they produce more in the summer than in the winter. So then every month I earn credits and I use credits. And because I retired in 2022 and I stopped driving 50 miles a day on my electricity, my credits just kept building up month after month. So I thought, what can I do to buy more electricity? So my answer was a heat pump. I would have liked to have gone with the geothermal, but my city lot was not conducive to that equipment getting into the property. So the heat pump is connected to the gas furnace. In a new house, you would probably want to do just the mini split units in each room, and then you can set each room to a different temperature if you want. But for an old house, it would be hard to run the tubes through the walls, or you'd have them showing, which would be kind of unsightly. So my experience is the same with the geothermal. The furnace runs longer when it's on the heat pump, and the air coming out of the vents is not as hot as the natural gas. I thought this was a good deal. The heat pump itself was only about $5,000, but the furnace had to be upgraded in order to be compatible. So that about doubled the price. So on the PV, it looks like they will pay for themselves in 12 years. Now, I'm on net metering still. I get net metering for 10 years. Um, so, yeah. And I have not seen any degradation. So the panels have been pretty consistent year to year. Uh, it but that's only 6 years, full years. So um, don't know when I might start seeing uh, any degradation. And that's all the slides I have. So
Questions for Bob before we open it up to questions for anybody? You can stop the screen sharing, Bob. Go ahead, Rick.
That's good to hear that you didn't have any degradation. Did you do anything to clean off the panels ever since you bought them?
uh, no, not to clean them. I do have a roof rake for solar panels to clear off the snow. And I do that sometimes. Yeah, I don't like the sun coming out in the winter when there's snow all over them. But we get so little electricity out of them, even when there's no snow in December and January, that sometimes I just let it go.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Thanks, and thanks for the presentations. I don't know if this is a specific question or one that's more general. I have rooftop solar, got it about the same era. And at this point, I'm thinking about installing a replacement for my gas forced air furnace, going to heat pump. And I'm hearing from some people that it really is important to have gas backup. I'm hoping not to do that. I'm interested in feedback about that.
Well, my setting is at when the outdoor temperature gets below 20 degrees, the gas furnace kicks on. And that's because the colder it gets, the more electricity it takes to move that heat. So the manufacturer says it will work at I forget, like -5 or -25 degrees, but that would be very expensive.
Gotcha.
So it's a matter of weighing dollars versus reducing your carbon footprint.
Okay, thank
I
you.
can comment on that question regarding effectiveness in winter. So for the geothermal system, of course, you're extracting heat from 50-degree groundwater. So that's much less difficult than pulling it out of the air.
Right.
We've found that it keeps the house comfortable down to 0 degrees. And we specifically told the heat pump that we don't want to use the toaster function. It does have backup resistance heating. And below 0 degrees, then probably you'd have difficulty keeping the house at like 75, but usually we keep it cooler than that. So my brother just put in air-to-air heat pump in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is
Mm,
a notch colder. So they have an old house, probably 1800 square feet, which is just heated by air-to-air heat pump, and that's a modern Mitsubishi system. And they also have these toaster functions. That is, when it's getting too cold, you actually are getting resistance heat, which is, of course, expensive and not very efficient. But the installer they talked to a number of installers, and some of them said you can't heat a house in Minnesota with just air heat pumps. You need a backup furnace, and they kept going until they found an installer who didn't believe that. And I think they're going on their third winter now. So yeah, it does work. The physics don't lie, but the technology's improved.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, and underscore two, I have an air-to-air heat pump, but I have backup propane because at the time that I got mine, if the air temperature outside was much below 28, the cost breakdown just really became prohibitive because the heat pump was not that efficient. So it probably really depends on your heat pump. But David, you said you hadn't gone through the cost calculations yet. I have Consumers Energy also. I came in a little too late for net metering, and the distributed generation, their rate setup has changed over time for me. So for a while, they were paying me like 85% of what they were charging me on a kilowatt hour basis. But now it's 1-to-1, but the other fees, like the distribution fees and things like that, have gone up. So I found it pretty challenging to do the calculations, not to discourage you, but maybe we can talk sometime if you want to really dig into it and share ideas.
Yeah, I think for those of us who are spreadsheet challenged or who are used to calculating the incalculable, we used to be on or have been on an ERP program where we get a net metering, which was very good, but that was a limited of time. That was just our small part of the system. My rationale is that during the summer when we're producing excess energy, the way that the electrical grid works, our excess electricity is running our neighbor's air condition with green electricity. And it looks like the whole neighborhood is using less power. That is everything stepped down from the 13, I think it's a 13 kilovolts medium distribution. It steps down into your neighborhood. And then, so it makes our neighborhood look greener as far as the net draw on the grid. And yes, it's difficult to calculate everything. What's the externality or externalized costs of polluting the atmosphere and pumping up climate change? It's hard to calculate that. So we've just plunged ahead boldly.
Awesome. Yeah, my time to pay off economically is different than my time to pay off emotionally. That was instantaneous.
Well said. Yeah, other questions for any of our presenters? We've got about 8 more minutes, so we got time for a few more questions. Harvey, go ahead.
Okay, so I have a gas furnace and a obviously electrical air conditioner, which is essentially a heat pump. And they work off the same air distribution system. Namely, the air conditioner just feeds into the heat exchanger compartment, that the same one that the furnace uses, and that's how the house is cooled. My question is, in principle, it seems to me I could replace the air conditioner with a heat pump and not have to do pretty much anything else. I could keep the same gas furnace and everything, and apart from some control systems being a little different, it seems that like that should work. And am I missing something? Or am I
That's
not
what
being clear?
I had a whole house air conditioner, which was removed. And the heat pump, yeah, cools the house as well as heats, but you have to have a compatible furnace.
I guess my question is why? What's incompatible with
It's
just
communications between the two. The heat pump has to let the furnace know when it has to turn on the fan, for example.
seems that's just a matter of electronic controls and you shouldn't have to buy a brand new furnace.
I think there's another issue, right? Which is the total amount of heat exchange, right, that a heat pump needs to do is much greater than the amount of heat exchange that an air conditioner needs to do. right? The temperature difference between your house and the outside air in the summer is maybe at most 30 degrees. And in the winter, it can be much greater than that. So I would think you're going to need a larger A-frame heat exchanger for that coolant to go through to heat the air than you do to cool the air. I'm not an expert on HVAC, but the thermodynamics of it would suggest that that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
I think one point of the question is that it's possible to do hybrid systems or to do it incrementally, and adding a mini split, for instance, to a particular room, a bedroom, or you could run that as heat pump and air conditioner and not have to deal with your old-fashioned system. So that would be a stepwise way to get into it.
Other questions or comments?
Well, speaking as a propagandist for Michigan, or I'm sorry, a representative for Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, I just like to encourage all of you renewable interested people that the homeowner tax credits are running out the end of the year. But if you're involved in a solar project on a nonprofit, we've done this on churches and houses of worship, also community centers. Those 30% or more credits still go through the end of 2027. And I think if you want to make an impact and you have connections, maybe you've got a shady lot, but you could actually push some solar into our communities working through nonprofits. And that applies to schools, municipal entities, houses of worship, and other areas. So I think that that's one way that we can keep thinking forward about how to get renewables that impact people's daily lives.
Yeah, next week, Thursday evening, we're going to have an energy Q&A session. So bring your questions, comments. And also in 2 weeks, Tom Stanton is going to talk to us about plug-in solar. Probably a number of you have read about the kind of balcony solar that's been going on in Germany. There's some issues here in this country with plug-in solar, and Tom's going to kind of talk about those issues. And hey, John, would you like to make a pitch for the year begin meeting?
Sure. I mean, it's on November 15th. We're going to be doing a hybrid version where it'll be an in-person meeting at the Washtenaw Community College. It starts at 10 o'clock. And then for those folks that can't get there in person but want to tune in, we're going to put it on Zoom as well. So tickets are $35 for in person and just 25 for Zoom. And the theme of the theme of the event is responding to the challenge. And I came up with that theme because, we've lost the investment tax credit because of the Trump administration, and he is doing everything he possibly can to try and derail and slow down the energy transition. And so we need to respond to the challenge. And so we need to talk about internally what we can do as an organization to support our business members to be able to recalibrate on how to market solar to residential. But we also want to focus strategies on promoting solar for places of worship, nonprofits, and businesses. So and where I'm deliberately planning a more networking time so people can get together and share ideas, kind of like what we're doing this evening, sharing ideas and getting to know one another and learning from each other. So I really encourage all of you to attend the Year in Year Begin meeting. I did put it in the newsletter on Monday and yesterday, and you'll see it again this coming Monday. I'll be marketing it pretty heavily for the next 4 weeks. So I encourage you to join us.
Hey, thank you, John. And hey, it's time to adjourn, I think. And thanks to our 3 speakers, Bob, David, and John. And thanks to all of you for attending, and hope to see you next week. Take care. Enjoy the fall.